So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hi everybody and welcome to Further Love of Paul McGrath podcast, and I'm delighted to say that I have got a very, very, very overdue conversation with the doyen, the man that knows everything about the Villa Academy, AVFC Academy on Twitter. The Villa Academy is here with me to chat all things about our young starlets, those who are trying to make their way in the game, I suppose, not just at Aston Villa Football Club, and to see how the progression has been over the last couple of months and maybe even a year, because I know we've spoken before, and I was only going back through our Twitter chats, and it's coming up. It was last July when we last spoke. And look, I know everybody thinks very highly about what you think, but if they don't, they should, because last time we spoke, you pinpointed Jayden Young as being the man, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you?
I love to come back to that. Every time he scores a goal, I search the tweet and I bring it up.
Exactly. Yeah, and that, like, we spoke about Jayden Young on the podcast last time that you were on, and hopefully you're going to be able to tell us about other starlets that we have that are maybe going under the radar at the moment. But I think what's going to be pertinent is we're recording this on Monday. I think the contract offerings are coming out this week sometime. You'll be able to tell me better than this, but I think they're coming out this week to the players. The retained lists and so on like that should be made known quite soon. So if we do talk about somebody and we find out, oh wait a minute, Villa haven't offered him a contract, bear that in mind, that we're doing it before any of those contracts have been offered just yet. But let's talk about that whole process, I suppose, first of all, because it is quite cutthroat, and sometimes because you know, academies are based on age groups, you just can't keep everybody. And I suppose, what's your view on that? And, you know, is there somebody that you think may be a casualty of maybe poor timing, or just Villa not being able to accommodate them now that the age group process, I suppose, has become a small bit more constrained?
So I think academy football in general is known to be quite cutthroat. So there was a documentary that went out about the Crystal Palace Academy on Channel 4 in the UK, and it was really good and insightful on the whole process. I think at this age group, if we're talking about the 21s and 18s, that's probably where it rears its head most, because they're the closest ones to needing to find a career and do something with it. And so for that to almost sort of be threatened is quite a big thing. I think the players that are coming to the end of their contract, there is, I think, I'm kind of hesitant to say what I want to say, but if I'm being completely honest, I'm not certain on how many will be offered deals, partly because of the sort of restructuring that they're trying to push through with the academy, where the academy in general becomes younger. And so some of the guys who are out of contract, like Juraj Roiki or Seb Revan, because of their age more than anything, I think they need to go away from Villa and find a club where they're going to be playing men's football week in, week out. And although being released is portrayed as a bad thing, I think actually in those circumstances it can kind of be a good step into actually making it in men's football. I think the thing that people will be surprised in hearing, or the reason people will be surprised in hearing that, is because those have been two of the names that you see every week popping up with impressive performances, and that, I think, sort of lies the problem, is that these guys should not be playing under 21s football anymore. they're men and they're ready to play men's football. They've both had loan moves where they've not massively impressed, or they've found it hard to sort of tie down a position. But I think it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of seen as probably the lesser of two evils for them to be released to foreign clubs. The other thing we kind of need to weigh in is there are a couple of players who are coming to the end of their contracts, like Sil Swinkles, who has just picked up an ACL injury, and I think in these sorts of circumstances, the club may actually look to offer a 1-year deal, for example. So he has facilities. Even if he does get released, I think they will offer facilities for him to come in and train to get back to full fitness, with the idea of him being ready to look for another club. I think if you would have asked me this before Emery came in, I would have said Sil Swinkles is probably one that will need to move on. Again, probably more so because of age. But he's had that little bit of involvement with Emery. The information that I have gotten is that Emery's preference of the sort of under-21 centre-backs is Sil Swinkles.
Interesting.
He's been involved in obviously we saw in the first team squad against Man City. And it's kind of been an interesting one because he's had his injury difficulties even this season before picking up the injury. I think then the difficulty is how you balance that with the sort of recruitment side of things, where we've picked up Josh Feeney from another club, we've picked up Kerr Smith from another club, and these guys need to be given opportunity to develop themselves. Swinkles himself obviously came from the Netherlands. I'm half and half with him. I have a feeling that maybe they will offer him a 1-year deal just because of the situation.
Talk to me, actually. It's one thing I'm very interested in. I'd love to get your take on it as well, is specifically the centre-half position. When you look at the players that we have, or I suppose the positions that you have in modern football, at the top level, unless you're an absolute can't-miss prospect, you don't really tend to get thrown into the deep end at a centre-half, for obvious reasons, because any mistake and it's curtains. Of that depth chart that we have there, you've got the likes of Lamar Bogart, who's gone out on loan to Bristol Rovers, playing him a bit in the defensive midfielder position, playing a bit of right back position there on his loan deal. You've got Josh Feeney, who Stephen Gerrard would have preferred, and had him involved with a couple of squads as well. Obviously, we know him. Fleetwood played a couple of games with Fleetwood, ball playing centre half as such. What's the pipeline like there for us? And I know I'm not going to hold you to this, but what's the expectation of any of those actually cracking the first team and first team football?
So I think part of the issue is that defenders in general struggle to get opportunities within when making the transition from academy to first team. I think if you were to ask me who would be ready now, I would probably say Kerr Smith. He's got that experience of men's football at Dundee United. And I think when I watch him, he's someone who won't struggle physically. And I think that is probably the biggest thing that maybe the coaches look at. Are they going to be dominated physically by a big, strong, seasoned Premier League striker? I think if you're then looking at who else is there, Josh Feeney, we need to really not forget his age.
Yeah.
He came to us with massive hype at 16. He's only 17 now, so there is still time for him. I think the biggest thing I would probably say with Josh Feeney, the on-field attributes are there, i.e. your passing, identification of like good routes and all your sort of defensive fundamentals. I think actually the thing for him is filling out his body. He's tall, but he's quite lanky, and so I think once he adds a bit of muscle and fills out a bit more, he'll be someone who looks a little bit more ready for the challenge of men's football. The probably the closest barometer that we have is when our academy sides or the under-21s play in the Papa John's Trophy.
Yes.
And
didn't fare too well this year.
No. And that it kind of plays into my thinking is that, generally speaking, these are the teams that we should be coming up against. And if they're playing for the first team, we'd be saying we need to be beating these teams 10 times out of 10. And so, yes, you can caveat it with the fact that they're playing in a back four and there's just more than one person who is responsible for the defence in those games. But when you're conceding the number of goals that we're conceding in those games, you probably have to question whether physicality is the main thing that is the gap that needs to be bridged before they can make the step up.
And the reason I asked that question was because it was all the more perplexing for me when, we did, and I know Diego Carlos was coming back, but when we left ourselves with the potential of, having only 3 fit centre halves there for a good portion of the season potentially after we let Jan Bednarik go, and a lot of the conversation was, well, just elevate Josh Feeney or elevate Sil Swinkles or whatever, but the physical element is just like it's gone to another level at the moment. And while I've no doubt that Josh Feeney could have come in and passed the ball around and look good, the filling out of the body is something he does need to do, and it's something I thought as well. And I was almost even going to email him and ask him, did he want to spend a weekend with me? I'd put a couple of pounds in his but it wouldn't be in muscle, I can tell you that much anyway. But it's one of the areas I think that of all the areas of development, I think within the academy, it's one. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It was a pointed question that I asked you because not every single group of players is going to have a Gareth Barry who can jump in at 17, 18 years of age and look the part in a back three or look the part in a back four, whatever the case is. They're pretty unicorns. They're pretty much unicorns when something like that happens, specifically for the centre half position. And every team is striving for them, and hopefully we will get somebody from that at the moment. And if we were to move, I suppose actually, we'll move on to the midfield area there. And you mentioned there Arian Reiki. Did you? Your thoughts are that he potentially could be a casualty of, I suppose, just a numbers game and the fact that his age doesn't line up. Is there anybody, I suppose, within that room that you have high hopes for that maybe isn't being heralded as much as they should be? Because we've seen previously the likes of Tommy O'Reilly was featured under Stephen Gerrard, and so on. There was other players like that as well. Is there anybody else in there that you were thinking? Because we see Declan Firth scoring every second game, but he's unlikely to probably make it at Aston Villa. And they're the thin margins. So who would be your kind of tip for the top in that midfield position?
So it's been an interesting one this season with the under-21. So we started with Hayden Lindley going out on loan, and that loan move didn't really pan out. He's come back to Villa. And so the majority of the season actually has been these more experienced guys playing in the midfield. So we haven't really had that opportunity to look at the guys maybe from the 18s who play the same position. One of the guys that has interested me when I've been able to watch the 18s. So actually there's a couple of guys. So we've got Todd Alcock, who has flirted with a sort of regular position in the under-21s. He's your kind of numbers passer. So he gets a high volume of passes off. He's kind of sit in that sixth position and can dictate from there. He impressed me in the game. We played Middlesbrough at Bodymore about a month ago now, and I think it finished something stupid like 6-4. Todd Alcock played a good game that day. And obviously the things that go hand in hand with that position, like your perception of danger and things like that, your positioning on the field, to know where to be on the pitch when the other team is attacking or countering, those sorts of things. He's really proficient at. I think he's one of those players where you would look at him and say he's 7 out of 10 at everything, but there's no one particular aspect of his game that you would say, right, that's really excellent. And so it'll be interesting to see how maybe next season goes for him. I'm not sure whether a loan move might be in the offing, but he's someone who I think we'll see a lot more of for the under-21s. Moving beyond Alcock, obviously a little bit further forward on the field, but Omari Kellyman has really had a breakthrough season. He's been, I think, if you were to name a player who has sort of had the biggest breakout this year, it would be him. He's gone from someone who came in and obviously was playing for the under-18s most weeks to really being one of the first names on the team sheet for the 21s, I think. He's really dynamic. He can play, obviously, further forward in attack. They use him sort of like as a 10 for the 18s. And when I've watched him, it's just that real positive attitude. Every time he gets the ball, it's forward. And the skill set that goes alongside with that, so he's really technical in tight areas. He wants to draw defenders into tight spaces because he's confident to beat them. And then the composure in the final third, if that's a late run from the 10 position or he's cutting inside as more of an inside forward, the composure when he gets into the final third, because he's picked up a number of goals for the under-21s, and I think that's a big thing when you're playing your first season of under-21 football, is you're showing you are capable of doing the thing that you should be doing.
Can I ask a question about two players as well? Actually, three players, and you can be as concise or as long, and the answers as you want on this one before we move into the striking department, because I have a fair idea who you're going to be talking about quite a lot in the striking department as the one to watch, and I think most people will know as well. But Johnny Burchell, somebody who's came from Bournemouth. I just looked up his age there. He's turned 18, and he obviously got his first cap for Bournemouth, and he's only 16 years of age. So I like some on him as well. Obviously, we've got Kyrie Pierre as well. Yes. He's a bit younger. I think it was Peterborough or somebody. I think we signed him from, and Bristol Rovers. And then Ewan Simpson came down from Hearts as well. So what's your thoughts on the three of those guys? Obviously, I think Johnny Burchell being here the longest and having had made his senior debut at 16, that's probably someone that I'm a bit surprised we haven't seen more from him or heard more from him. So
the issue with Johnny Burchell is injuries. Since he came in, one of his first games was a 10-0 win over Norwich in the under-18s, and then since then he's had just a horrible time with injuries. I think he missed a good portion of last season, came back into pre-season again and had a season-ending injury in pre-season. So just unfortunate circumstances, really. And I think these are the times where you see players he will be given a little bit more time, and hopefully we see more of him because he's someone who, at full fitness, when he came to Villa, there would have been extremely high hopes for. The other two players that you mentioned, Kyrie Pierre. So again, I think I'd probably put him in that bracket of not really one outstanding attribute. So he's been used in a number of positions. He gets used as an 8, as a 10. He's been played on the left wing. He came off the under-21s at right wing. And so he's playing a variety of positions. So I think that tells you how highly they think of him, to be putting him in game situations where he's maybe not playing his favoured role or his best role. So but yeah, I think someone who similar to Omari Kellyman, he's looking to do that same thing. So again, comfortable in tight space. He's maybe a bit more of a box-to-box midfielder. He's got that sort of drive to get forward and back, whether that's running late into the box or fast break from a corner. He's the one sprinting the length of the pitch to cover.
Ewan
Left-footed,
sorry.
and Pierre left-footed, and so I think that adds another dynamic. And then Ewan Simpson, I've been really interested by him whenever I've been able to watch him. Obviously, coverage of the under-18s is a little bit less. He's more your sort of technical, what's the word? A little bit smaller in terms of stature, so he's more your sort of stereotypical 10. One who will pick it up and look for that key pass or dictate games just from his ability on the ball. One of the things that I noticed, and this was in the FA Youth Cup loss to Southampton, is that I think there is still a little bit of growth there physically to come. And I think in that Southampton game, we did just get dominated a little bit physically. And so Simpson was probably the one who suffered most from that, because in those tight areas where you need to be picking up the second balls, we were just getting battered, and so there wasn't any possession for him to really create from. But again, it's someone who's had a real positive impact on the under-18s. He scored multiple throughout this run to the under-18 Premier League final, and so he'll probably be in the starting lineup for that final. So again, it'll be an interesting one to see how he plays.
Excellent. Moving on to the strikers department, though, you've already mentioned Omari Kellyman, so we're going to omit him from the conversation here. But look, the jewel in the crown, I think, at the moment is a certain Rory Wilson. He came down from Rangers with a huge pedigree, has lived up to it so far. But what can we expect from him? And are there any, like, what does that striking department specifically, I suppose, for the under-18 team? Because with the under-21s, you know, it's the regular guys, I suppose, really, of the Brad Youngs are still there, and the you know, players that maybe we know a small bit more about. But what do the under-18s kind of hold?
So I think this has probably been the biggest positive for the under-18s this season. Obviously, you've got Rory Wilson. There's Charlie Lutz as well, who scored. Yep. He's actually our top scorer in the under-18 Premier League. Wilson, I think the thing that you're looking for someone with this hype around him is that his fundamentals are just so good. His ball striking, his understanding of what finish and when. I think that's the thing that sort of separates him from other players of his age group. The important thing, I think, will be how that translates to men's football. So I think it's one thing playing against guys who potentially aren't going to make it as professional footballers, to then go from that to, if we see him in the Papa John's Trophy next season, how can he create those chances for himself? How is his movement against those more seasoned, experienced defenders that he'll be coming up against? I guess the one thing that you would say is that he's scored a couple of goals from memory in the Birmingham Senior Cup this season, and so that tells me that he's picking up good areas. Yep. I think he's the kind of player that will always score goals. It's about that rest of the game as well. And again, thinking back to that FA Youth Cup game against Southampton, I think that's one area where he struggled a little bit in adding that sort of your team's under the pump. You need a bit of pressure taken off in the game. You need a bit of respite, and we weren't getting it. We weren't getting any sort of hold up in their final third, and so that's probably one area to improve. I think the one thing I'm conscious of with Rory Wilson is that the people, I think the hype has gone massively over what
We
it should
haven't
be.
learned our lesson from Louis Barry.
And I see people talking about surprise that he's not in Premier League squads and things like that. And I'm like, I don't think he's ready for a Premier League squad, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah, he's definitely someone with the talent and the skills to be going that far. Maybe after 6 more months of Premier League 2 football at the start of next season, we'll be talking about someone who can get minutes in the Cup or minutes in the Premier League. But I think at the moment it would be more damaging to him than beneficial to throw him in a Premier League game where, if we're being honest, I'd expect him to be eaten up a little bit by Premier League defenders.
Yeah, and I was being a bit facetious when I mentioned Louis Barry. Obviously,
Yes.
Louis Barry out on loan at the moment. He still has all the potential in the world, and I think the club are doing a good job in kind of managing him at the moment. Albeit that we would like to see his loan moves be a bit more fruitful from playing time point of views and so on like that. But there's one last player, and I know that I've got a hard finish for this as well. I need to jump off soon, and I know you do too. There's one last player I want to chat about because he's a player that's always interested me, and at a kind of an underage level, he seems to be getting a lot of international kind of recognition, or at least talked about in that way. And that's right back Jaden Barber. Talk to me a small bit about him, because I've been told to be excited about him as a prospect as a right back. What's the lowdown on him?
So we were having a quick chat before recording about Jaden, and I think if we were talking stylistically of a comparison, actually I'd probably compare him probably closest to someone like your Kane Kessler-Hayden. So he's someone who can be dynamic on the ball. He's a really good dribbler, not afraid to come inside. He's got good pace on the counter-attack. And so he's more or less your modern fullback in that he's probably better at attacking than he is defending. I think it's been a bit of a funny season for him. So at the end of last season, he was more or less a regular with the under-21s, and has been pushed down to the under-18s, and to all intents and purposes been performing well, as you'd expect from someone with experience of under-21 football going back down to the 18s. But I think we'll see more of him for the 21s next season. He's someone I'm also excited to see a lot more of, because the bits that we did see are really exciting. So someone, like we said, who can really affect the attack from that right back position. And then thinking forward for how that translates to what the first team tried to do. If we wanted to have that sort of more expressive, more direct attacking fullback on that right hand side, Barber is someone who could be putting his name into that hat, maybe after a season of under-21s next year.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, as I say, we've spoken about a lot of players there, and Aston Villa have good talents in a lot of areas, but you need that little bit of luck to be able to make it happen. You need that little bit of, I suppose, exposure to football is what you need. And you made a really interesting point there about Rory Wilson a moment ago about, do we keep him out of playing underage games so that he can have the experience of going to a match day squad with the senior team? And it really is about, you get better at the game of football by playing the game of football. And somebody like Jaden Barber, it's going to be interesting to see how much trust is putting in from that right back position, with an older age group, next year as well, because, as I say, he's one that the academy think highly of, and they're the areas that you tend to see players break into teams a bit easier. The Luke Thomases of at Leicester, Trent Alexander-Arnold, at Liverpool, so on and so forth. People can point to fullbacks kind of getting a run in the game, more so than centre halves. So that's really, really interesting. Listen, I am really thrilled, and thank you so much for popping on today. I really appreciate your time. For anybody who isn't following at Academy AVFC, I think I said at AVFC Academy at the very start. I do apologize. At AVFC Academy is a poor imitation of at Academy AVFC on Twitter. I really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for coming on to chat to us about all things Aston Villa.
My pleasure. I think we said before we probably should do this a little bit more. There's quite a lot happening with the academy. But
as I said at the start, I was looking through our chats here, and it's all about, are you free to come on next week? Yeah, I should be. Message me, give me a shout later, closer to the date, and then it's are you free to come on next week? And it's never a case of give you a shout closer to the date. So this should be a more this should definitely be more regular chat, and I hope to make it, because you know everything there is to know, and I really appreciate that insight as well, because it's very tough for us to find a lot of information over this side of the pond with regards to the underage setup. So thank you so much.
No worries. I think it's, in general, it is just hard to get information on the academy to begin with. We were talking briefly about that, weren't we? So, at any time, really, I'm happy to dedicate myself to a bit more than what we have been doing.
Excellent. Really, I'm going to hold you to that. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate your time today. Obviously, if you're not following the Villa Academy on Twitter, get following there. And for us ourselves as well, if you could give this podcast a thumbs up, or if you listen to it on the audio podcast, rob your friend's phone and sign him up for the audio podcast as well. It's free. So as somebody said to me, your podcast costs free $99. And I said, yeah, it is. It's a free podcast. So just sign him up for it and click on the thumbs up button on YouTube as well on his phone. And let's see if we can get those numbers rocketing upwards. But I appreciate everything all you listeners do for the podcast. Until the next time, stay safe, stay healthy. And all that's left to say is up the Villa.